Ashank?
Yeah, I think as I was saying there, that really speaking, when you look at product or software product innovation company versus a service company, what is different is really the priorities that that particular organization faces and the kind of issues that they grapple with. Typically, a company which is in product kind of business would have to look at very closely the technology, the platform issues, which are very, very important because you are committing money to that by deciding certain decisions there. So the technology scanning, environment scanning becomes indeed important from that point of view. The end user interaction is important, but not necessarily, do or die situation there because you are taking inputs. So at the same time, you are not daily interacting with them. The HR issues also tend to be typically different between a product company selection of the people that I was talking about. They're the kind of people that you need, the kind of issues that you look at them, etc., etc., pretty much different. When you go to service companies, the whole thing is driven in a different fashion. Our matrices are different. We are all talking about, what is the revenue, what is the backlog. All these measurements change, and this is very important. If you put a measurement of service company on a product company, it's not going to work. We clearly come out as a loser if we do tend to do it. So systems, processes, measurements are different in service company. Kind of people, as I said, also are typically different. The orientation and time frames are different in a service company scenario. The time to delivery to customer are different. So one has to be conscious to the different dimensions in which you operate and look at it. That's the point I would make. And there are indeed differences. It is indeed difficult to wed both of them together.
Right.
You have to consciously create island and bridges, as I said again.
So, Jeremy, I'm kind of curious, building on Ashank's point. Ashank, that's a great comment. One of the things you said, the client interactions may be minimized in the product company. Is that true or not? You are more a product company at Symantec, but are you guys, for example, involving customers in certain way when you innovate? I'm kind of curious to hear.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the comments. I think some of our kind of core big ideas, if you like, tend to be, and this may sound odd, tend to be less customer driven. And the reason I say that is I think the more of a technology company you are, the engineers who build the technology really understand the use of the technology better than the customer. And the customer often wants the last big thing fixed. So their idea of innovation tends to be, hey, can you make that easier to deploy, or can you save me some money there? The example I always, kind of give out, if you look at automotive and GPS systems and satellite navigation, that probably didn't come out of a focus group. Because the customers in general, I 10 years ago had no idea that you could triangulate 9 satellites around a point and have a lady in the dashboard direct me within 10 feet as to where I was going. And so technology companies, I think in general, tend to be, their incremental innovations, of which there are many, do tend to be customer driven. We do focus groups. We want to keep our best customers happy. At the same time, there is an element of innovation there where I don't really want the engineers talking to customers. I want them to understand the bounds of what the technology can achieve and innovate around that, because out of that you may come up with a game changer.
Yeah.
And you really need both.
Right. That's an excellent point. I want to make sure we open the floor to your questions, but I just want to conclude on or add upon what Jeremy said. That's an excellent point. I think, Ashank and you, I think you bring up an important point, is that there's a lot of two buzzwords that going on in the tech sector, and I think it might be good to. One is the whole customer-driven innovation. Everyone, all CEOs talk about we want to be customer-centric and customer-driven. I think Jeremy, put it on the nail, saying that actually, not all the times. Steve Jobs, if you were to do a lot of focus groups, I don't think he will be introducing all the products he's launching, right? So clearly, in some cases, you don't want to be customer-driven. You have to be customer-minded, but not always, customer-driven. Another concept, which I think, we talked about briefly, the whole ecosystem, and I'm sure hopefully we'll discuss about it as well. Not everything has to be open, and everything has to be, involving partners either. Because if you start doing that, then there are a lot of IP issues to worry about as well. So sometimes, I think the Buddhist way of, the middle way may be the right thing to do. So with that, I want to kind of open the floor to questions. So yes, please. If you can state your name, company would be great. Thank you.
Microphone? Yeah, no. Hi, I'd like just to add to your last question. In a service business model between, say, an Indian company and a company in the US or in Europe that is into product, there is increasingly the trend that product design and engineering is happening out of India that by definition almost will include some kind of innovation from the Indian side for the client. So can you elaborate a bit what is the organizational fit to enable that? And what is the interface that is necessary and the kind of learning curve that the both organizations have to go through?
Okay, great. So I guess maybe the two service providers, you want to take a look, whack at it? Ganesh?
Yeah, I presume you're talking about, I mean, for product companies, the services segment, which is really done out of India by third party, is that right? So I think, I mean, that's a very good point. And in fact, it also goes back to what Ashank was saying earlier, that in a lot of these cases, I mean, you have to take the lessons you've learned from regular services and whatever other products you've built. Because this is a service to a product company. So it's really the whole product OEM space that we talk about. And I think the lessons you learn is that you cannot, and I think Ashank mentioned that earlier, you cannot take the same people who are working on your application maintenance or your application support and put them there. So they have to have some idea of architecture, some idea of design. At the same time, I think all the good mechanisms that you have in services companies, I mean the SCI, CMM level 5 and everything else need to be applied. So this is the classic hybrid, which if you apply it well can be extremely good. But if you go for one extreme or the other, you're probably not going to succeed. And a lot of companies who are, in fact, that's probably the most fraught with failure, taking a services model and applying it for working for a software product companies.
Shank?
Yeah, I think pretty much what Ganesh said. Only thing I'll add is, see, there is a dimension here of what is your responsibility as an offshore supplier. Typically what it happens is the way it is defined by Ganesh, where you come and say, okay, this is a product, and you go and develop it. So you are really a developer and not an innovator in a very, very strict sense. But if your role is not that way, but if you are really a laboratory for your customer, where the innovation indeed is your responsibility, and that may happen probably in captives, probably, where they say, okay, this is my lab in this country, then the role becomes pretty much like any other organization where they have to build that culture which focuses on making innovations happen. So ultimately you have to define whether you are a product company or an R&D company or innovation company, or you are serving an R&D lab, which are two different things completely. That's the point I'm trying to make.
That's a great point, yeah, because a captive unit may be in a product-centric mindset because that's what they're supposed to, whereas a service company doing offshore R&D may extend their service discipline to product activities. Yeah. That's a good point. Other questions? There's one there. We'll come to that moment, sir. Can we get the mic to the lady there?